So now we're going to move on to our next presentation. So Jenny, can you say hello?
Hi, everyone. How are you?
So thank you so much for being with us today. And as you pull up your slides, could you give us a self-introduction?
Sure, I can. Okay, I think we're there. I hope everyone can see what I have here. Let me pull up the chat so I
Yeah,
can.
that looks wonderful. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Ginger. So thank you so much for having me today. Thank you for the honor of your attention and time. I'm Jenny Kulzer, and I'm here today to talk about a leadership principle and practice that I've put in place over the years. So to be unimpeachable is a practice. In fact, it's not something that you say, okay, I've learned this, I'm there. You dust your hands off and say, okay, I'm done. That's the end. And because that's just not how it works. It's a practice. It's something that you can do forever. It's something that you can do immediately, starting directly after this presentation. So hopefully you'll have some great things that can take away from it. So I created this principle, this way of working out of necessity. I did this for me, but I also did it for the world, for our future. I wanted to lead new employees with good intent myself. I also wanted to lead myself. I wanted to feel like I was doing good things when it comes to how I navigate the world of business, both as an entrepreneur when I was an entrepreneur and just a woman in business like I am now. So I wanted to lead employees myself with good intent. And that's where unimpeachable starts with intent. Oh. So for those of you that need an agenda, I know some people do. I am a person that likes to know what we're doing and why and what's happening next. So we will quickly talk about my journey. So one of the reasons I didn't introduce myself completely fully is because you're going to learn about me today. But the way that I'm going to tell you about myself is kind of a journey. It's about how I came to these conclusions, these realizations, and it's kind of going to be maybe helpful in how you look at things, I hope. Then we're going to talk a little bit about becoming unimpeachable. So if in fact this is something that you'd like to employ, uh, a few tips and tricks as to how to get there. And then finally, becoming unimpeachable at work. You'll need to maintain your sense of self in doing that. And I know that especially women, we have a very difficult time. We go to work and we sort of erase who we are in order to be able to kind of fit in, right? And so what I found is that when I am myself, which is this rather over animated human being, my point is well received. People enjoy being around someone else who is truly being themselves at work. And so we're going to talk about maintaining your sense of self while becoming unimpeachable at the same time and kind of employing this practice. So that's the agenda. Excellent. Thanks, Colleen. I know there's people that need the agenda, right? What's going to happen next? Oh, I'm so sorry. My navigation buttons aren't working. So, unimpeachable. This is my journey. We're going to talk a little bit about my journey. This is actually a picture of Amsterdam. I am a digital director at Corbion right now. So, Corbion is a company that's based out of Amsterdam. And so I go there a lot, which is really incredible. In fact, I got to actually ride on this boat. It's this incredible boat where they feed you dinner and you drive through the canals, float. But so many wonderful experiences in my current position, but it's not always been wonderful. I've had quite a normal life. I've had normal ups and downs. I don't come from great wealth. I had a nice middle class upbringing. I started slinging pizzas at 15 years old at Pizza Hut. My career path has been curvy, to say the least. I've been all kinds of things. I started out as an administrative assistant, as many women do, a switchboard operator, a magazine editor. I've been a book critic, a college professor, professional speaker, marketing leader, writer, director, producer for short films. I've run a company. I've been an entrepreneur, a professional speaker, a podcaster, and many other things. So I didn't get a college degree that said, okay, you go and you become a doctor. You say, okay, I'm going to go to be a doctor, and I take 4 years of undergrad, and then I go and work in my specialty in school, and then you graduate and you're a doctor. So many degrees don't get you there. And now, thank goodness, we're talking about careers that don't require degrees anymore. It's no longer, you graduate high school and your parents say you're required to get a degree or you won't get a job. Thank goodness the conversation is changing around that. I'm so glad. I have 4 children, and out of those 4 children, they are not all going to go get the traditional 4-year degree. And I actually completely love that. So I'm telling you these things about myself to let you know that I didn't have this really straight, easy career path. I have struggled. Just like I imagine everyone on this call. We, as women, as leaders, as people that really are trying to get ahead, make a difference in the people around us, but also maybe even in the world, maybe just in the business that we're in. I say just, but in the businesses that we're in, it's important that we care. Remember, we spend 1/3 of our lives working. So if you divide your day into 3 pieces, you've got 8 hours for work, 8 hours for play, and 8 hours for sleep. If in fact you're that regimented, which sadly I'm not. But if that were the case, then you're still spending 1/3 of your life at work. You can choose to spend that 1/3 of your life hating it, right? Oh man, this is the worst. I'm just going to do my job, go home, and hide under the covers. Or you can choose to make a difference there. You can choose to put your heart into it. And I think we're all here today because we do, right? So I wanted you to know that I hope you had a maybe a straighter journey than mine or an easier journey than mine, but it does in fact make us all kind of sisters, kind of friends, because we can communicate about this. We've been here together. I understand if you question things. I too, and I'm making assumptions. I can see no one's faces, but I too have looked around at other people in work environments that are maybe my same age or my same level of education and said, well, wait, why are these people higher up than me in this business? Or, I don't understand what I'm doing differently or what I'm doing wrong to not get there. So, I think these are normal thoughts and fears. And so, throughout these years, throughout these occupations I've had, I'm an observer. So watching people throughout these years, watching peers, starting as an admin assistant, starting as, slinging pizzas. I was once a dog washer, right? All the different things that I have done. You watch people and you pay attention. And what I've noticed is that a couple of things. First of all, women have to work a little bit harder. We know that, right? Like anyone who's been in an office, we know that women have to struggle. We have to struggle more. Many times we have to prove ourselves when some of those around us don't. And so that makes it a little more difficult. Sometimes we have to be twice as good as those around us. And sometimes we have to be faster. We have to make very few mistakes. And so when I was looking at those things and thinking about like, how can I frame my thinking around that, right? So how can I be successful and make great decisions all the time, if I'm leading people or not leading people, if I own, when I was an entrepreneur, or if I am just an independent contributor or a consultant, how can I make a difference? And, in observing those people, observing the way that they make decisions, I can see that very, very many people make decisions based on very different intents. So my intent might be, to get home early. So maybe I won't do those things today. Well, that putting those things off might actually hurt someone else or hurt the business. And so when we start kind of reframing our thinking around someone other than our own brain, our own self, our own moving up and moving ahead and moving forward, it actually helps us more than if we're thinking about ourselves. So that's how Unimpeachable was born. And that's what I'm going to share with you today. So to begin with, again, for those of you who need an agenda, we're going to talk about the 5 pillars of unimpeachability, which I think is a word I made up. I'm pretty sure that's not a real word, but we're going to use it a lot today. So you're welcome. New word. 5 pillars of unimpeachability. And these are things that I have gathered through all of the crazy twists and turns of my career. So my journey to unimpeachability, or to this method, this practice, was a very long one. The first pillar of unimpeachability is to raise your hand. When I think about raising my hand, I think about when I first got a job at the Kansas City Star as a book editor. So as a very young woman, I was not yet old enough to order alcohol at a restaurant or bar. I've always loved to read, but as a very young woman, I thought, gosh, wouldn't it be wonderful if I had a career that would combine my love of reading and then I could also maybe make money. So I reached out to the books editor at the Kansas City Star. And if you like to read and you've ever read the books section in the Kansas City Star, many years ago, there was a wonderful books page written by John Mark Eberhart. He's since passed away, which is quite sad, but he was an excellent books editor. Oh my goodness, I adored him. But I didn't know him at the time, and I was 20 years old, and I sent him just a random writing sample. And I thought, this is crazy. He doesn't know me. This is unsolicited. I hardly know anything about this, but I thought, when I read the books page on the Kansas City Stars in the actual newspaper, yeah, it was that long ago. Sorry, but it's true. The books page was very, very cerebral and very, it was intended for people that were reading like Sir Gawain and the Green Giant and Chaucer's Canterbury Tales. And so these are great stories, and a bunch of us read them in school, but I thought, gosh, wouldn't it be great if somebody was talking about things like kids' books? Wouldn't it be great if we had a younger person's perspective? And so I just kind of pitched it. 15 minutes later, John Mark Eberhart hired me as a freelancer for the Kansas City Star. Since then, I've written book reviews, hundreds of book reviews for the Kansas City Star, the Oklahoma Gazette, and the it's the Women in Business magazine for ABWA. So I don't do it anymore, but I did do that for about 10 years. If I had not just raised my hand and said, hey, I think I would be good at this. Let me send you a writing sample. Let me just give this a shot. It would never have happened. And so I think raising your hand is about taking opportunities when they come to you, but also there's a strong caveat. Take opportunities that you're good at. So I actually have a whole entire separate presentation that I give about raising your hand. And it is all about, finding that balance. But for the purposes of being unimpeachable, raising your hand is important because it really helps you to stand out a little bit, like what Lillian was talking about, not in clothing, but in the way that you come across to others. So if you're in a business meeting and someone is saying, or, in your own business and someone's like, wow, I really wish we could do this one thing. You're like, wow, I might be good at that. I like doing that. Raise your hand. Say, hey, you know what? I'd like to do that. Even if it's not in your job duties. These are things that can really help you get noticed and get ahead. So raise your hand. Pillar number 1. Pillar number 2 is to speak your truth. This is one of my favorite stories. So here we go. when I was even a little bit younger than when I became a book critic, I was working at ABWA, which is the American Business Women's Association. Maybe some of you are members or have been members or know members. It's a pretty large organization. I was an admin assistant. I started out as a switchboard operator, if you can believe it. That was a long time ago. But when I worked at ABWA, every year they had a national convention that was massive. And the year that I began working there, the national convention was in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And our keynote speaker was going to be Janet Reno, the Attorney General of the United States of America. Actually, at that time, it was the former Attorney General, but still, I mean, I thought it was going to be amazing. So we get on the plane to go to Albuquerque, and the woman that ran the American Business Women's Association, if any of you were members, you might remember her name, was Carolyn. She was wonderful. She sat next to me. I mean, I was a little bit overwhelmed because I was just this young girl, and then like the big boss sitting next to me, and she said, I really want to get to know you. She was so incredible. And she said, I really want to get to know you. I would love to know, what would you like to do? What are your dreams? What are your hopes? And I told her I really like to speak. I'm sure that's probably a huge surprise to you, even after listening to me for 5 minutes. But I do. I like to talk. And I told her that I would really like to be able to, I like to get up in front of people. I really like to talk. I like to tell jokes. I like to teach. I like to learn. And she said, oh, great. She said, maybe at the next convention, we can set you up to teach some tech classes. And she said that because I was younger and I understood technology pretty well. The American Business Women's Association membership was kind of aging at that point. And so there were a lot of women that needed help with technology. This is more than 20 years ago. So she said this to me, and I said, yes, oh, I would love that. So the entire convention happens in Albuquerque. I'm a gopher. I'm just, setting up lights, making sure everybody has what they need, fetching water for speakers and things like that. On the very last day of the convention, it's time for Janet Reno's keynote. And she was doing a lunch and learn, but it was a question and answer session in this giant room with 6,000 women. And Carolyn came up to me, and she had a big sheaf of papers in her hand, and she walked very close to me and whispered in my ear, I've lost my voice from talking so much this week. Here's your chance. And she handed me those papers, and it was the entire question and answer session with Janet Reno. And so I, as a 19-year-old girl, conducted a question and answer session with Janet Reno in front of 6,000 women. That was cool. If I had not told Carolyn the truth, if I had thought on that plane, what would she want to hear from me? She would never have thought this random girl who's an assistant at her place of business might want to do something like this. And I never would have had that. I never would have had that amazing experience. And I remember such amazing things about that. I remember Janet Reno was too tall for the podium. She had to take her shoes off to reach the microphone, which was stretched fully straight up from the podium. So speak your truth. Tell people. Talk about what you'd like, what your dreams are, what your hopes are. Because again, Lillian, I'm going to keep bringing you up because you said so many great things in your presentation, but she talked about manifesting your future, and I believe it. It's true. But nobody can help you if they don't know what you want. Speak your truth. The third pillar of being unimpeachable is seeking to learn. Now, this is one of my most embarrassing stories. So, just prepare yourself. We all make mistakes, and I did. So when moved for a little bit further in my career, and I was a project analyst for a company here in Kansas City. It was a electrical company. The headquarters were in Toronto, where I later moved and did a lot of really great things for the company. But at this point in time, I was still working in the office in Kansas City, and there I had my yearly evaluation with my boss. She was my age. We had the same education, like I said, that questioning, I was younger. And in my head, I was like, gosh, I don't understand why we're the same age. We're similarly educated. I feel like we're similar when it comes to levels of intelligence, but I questioned it. And so I was in my peer evaluation or my year in evaluation, and we had a nice talk. I was doing well, and she told me that, and then she told me that she was doing succession planning, and I said, "Oh, great. What does that look like?" And she said, "Well, I can't decide if I'm going to put you in as my successor or someone else. We'll call her Jane. You are Jane." And one of the things you'll find is that if as a passionate person, I also have a bit of a temper, which I've learned to keep under wraps a little bit more at work. But at this point, I was in my 20s and I kind of lost it. Not crazy, but I said, "Oh, why would you even consider Jane? How could you possibly? How am I not the first?" Which, again, this is embarrassing, right? This is an embarrassing story to tell. But how many of us don't have an embarrassing story from our youth when it comes to work and learning things? And this was a learning experience for me. And she said, "Well, Jenny, there's a lot of paperwork involved. There's a lot of detail involved." And I said, "A monkey can do paperwork." Yeah, I really did. I told my boss that a monkey could do her job. Mm-hmm. So that was a mistake. And I looked back and realized that if I had spent a little more time and thought about, okay, I would like to seek to learn why she said this, right? She had a reason. She wasn't just being mean to me. And me arguing with her was truly going to get me nowhere, right? But me thinking about, okay, she has a reason for this. I'd like to find out why and maybe make myself better at it. I immediately went to my temper and said something terrible. Of course, guys, I apologize. I worked there for 5 more years, but not for her. I quickly moved out of her department because I thought I have shot myself in the foot here, and I think I probably had. It's actually one of my favorite stories to tell because it's an embarrassing one, but it's true. So seek to learn, even if you feel offended, like I did. Okay. Oh, excellent. Unimpeachable pillar number 4 is to find altruism in your life. So we all know what altruism is, right? It's the greater good. It's the seeking out of the greater good. It's the top of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So when I think about altruism, I think about the book The Thornbirds. So I'm an avid reader. I read 3 books, sometimes 4 books a week. It's just the thing I love the most to do. So when I first was reading The Thornbirds, I was in the hayloft in my barn in Oak Grove, Missouri, which is where I grew up. And I thought about, I was reading The Thornbirds, and on the very first page, almost like the end paper of that book, it talks about what the thornbird is, which is actually like a mystical bird, but it sacrifices its life by impaling itself on a thorn. But it makes the most sweetest song when it sacrifices itself on this thorn. And so it sacrifices itself for the greater good of the beauty of the song. Okay. I realize this is cheesy. I'm not talking about life or death here, but I am talking about, that whole concept. I remember being fascinated by that concept. Like, what would be worth it in life to give up your own life in order for the greater good? So I'm not talking about quite that level of altruism. We're not talking about life or death, but we are talking about an altruistic mindset. So putting others before yourself, putting even the planet, the people on the planet, the people around you, even putting your supervisors before yourself, putting your employees before yourself. It's kind of like a stretch mindset. So if you take your current mindset and you kind of stretch it to altruism, you just, okay, so if you're really, really stuck in your head, it's a great way to go, okay, wait, who am I thinking about here? Am I thinking about just myself? Or am I truly thinking about the world around me. It's a really good way to kind of center and ground yourself. And so I think a lot about altruism. And in fact, I talk about altruism and authenticity as a separate subject because it's one of my favorite subjects to talk about. And I speak about it a lot. It's kind of one of my leadership mantras: altruism and authenticity. Yes, Zoe. For the younger group, great 80s miniseries. It was. I agreed. Who didn't love Maggie and Ralph? You know what I'm saying? We're talking about the Thornbirds. Excellent. All right. Now to the final pillar. This is important. And honestly, I almost don't need to talk about it because Lillian talked about this so much. Be authentic. So this pillar is really, really important because your personality at work can make or break who you become at work. Think about yourself as a sculpture. At work, you can become just another one of those, millions and millions of sculptures, that they find like in the tombs in Egypt. They'll find tombs of like 5 million or 5 million. Sorry, I'm an exaggerator. As a storyteller, we exaggerate. And I'm a storyteller. But thousands of these stone soldiers that they bury with Egyptian kings. So those soldiers all look the same. But if you are a sculpture and you're like, man, I don't want to be one of those soldiers. I'm going to be different. I'm going to be myself. You can actually be authentic in yourself. So remember that finding yourself and then homing in on those actual traits of yours that are truly you. People dig it. They dig getting to know you at work. Remember, again, you spend 1/3 of your life at work. Why not love it? Why not be you? Why not enjoy your life there? Why not enjoy the people around you? Why not encourage them to be authentically themselves? This story is about my entrepreneurship. So a few years ago, I did run a marketing agency here in Kansas City. So if any of you are in Kansas City, you may have heard of Cherry Marketing. I did do quite a few presentations around town about the marketing tackle box and what you need to have in there in order to launch your new business. So my niche was new businesses and launching them in the marketing world because so many new business owners truly didn't know how. But my favorite color is red. Again, back to Lily. And I don't know if that means anything about me, but it is my favorite color. And again, it was Cherry Marketing. And so I sculpted my image around the things that I already am. Favorite color is red. So I wore red to every meeting. And everyone expected it. They couldn't, I would walk in and they would go, oh, we haven't seen that red dress yet. So they expected me to show up. I was the lady in red. And then being passionate is just, I can't be any way else. I don't know how to be anything other than this. So I did not put a leash on it. And you guys know what I mean by that, right? Like you go to work, you kind of damp down kind of who you are a little bit. But I didn't put a leash on my passion. And I was completely authentically me. And it allowed me to run that business for 3 years in Kansas City. I loved it. I had fun until I didn't. So entrepreneurship is just not for me. It's okay. For those of you that are doing it, more power to you. It is hard. Oh my gosh, it's so difficult. And it's so rewarding when it works out. And Cherry Marketing was very fun, and it was an entire education for me. And I loved it. And being authentic really was the only reason, I think, maybe one of the main reasons why Cherry was something that I was able to do for those years. So excellent. Let's see. I'm looking at the chat. Let's see here. Aaron says, to follow up with your and Lillian, I am not authentic. Any advice? I don't tell people about my hobby that I love, and I give me weekend to enjoy. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. That's a great question. We're going to talk about how to kind of find your authenticity and then how to show it. So pause and we'll get there. But great question. Okay. So those are the 5 pillars. Let's talk a little bit about what those pillars are for. The pillars are things that you can be, or you can do. I'm sorry. You can do these pillars. These are all things that you can work on. You can put them up in your office. There's a, let's see, I think my next slide actually is all of them on the same slide. Put this up in your office. Just like cut it out if you want and stick it up in there, because these things, if you're like, oh man, I'm really feeling kind of flustered today, oh, okay, you know what? I'm not speaking my truth, or I'm not being authentic, or, I should have raised my hand. Oh, let me go back and say, hey, I'd like to volunteer to help with that project or whatever. These are kind of the foundation for becoming unimpeachable. Excellent. Okay. This is a picture of me in Pompeii. This is just a recent journey I took, and I had so much fun. I went to Europe and I stayed in Naples, and I got to go to Pompeii. And one of the things that I loved about Pompeii was they had water on the streets, like these huge, big water fountains almost, that they still pump water through. And it was for everyone. It was for the good of everyone. Now, sadly, in Pompeii, they did have slavery, which is a sad part of Pompeii. And I'm not talking about that part. But what I am talking about is that in Pompeii, they weren't charging people for water. They weren't looking around going, yeah, some of you aren't going to have anything to drink. I guess you're just going to be thirsty. I guess we're going to cut your water off. In Pompeii, they really did. They were trying to create a better society. Sadly, with the side of slavery, maybe they were going to get to that, I don't know, after the volcano. But at any rate, I saw some things there that I really loved, and I just thought, I'll slap this picture in there. Sweaty and gross, but whatever. All right, so now let's understand the assignment of being unimpeachable. So remember, I said those 5 pillars were things you can do. Being unimpeachable is what you can be. So what does unimpeachable mean at work? Well, first we have to examine our underlying motivations. So when we think about our underlying motivations, we have to start with, what is the decision that we're being presented with? Or even sometimes I think about unimpeachable just in a meeting. What am I going to say? What's coming out of my mouth? And when I apply this to that, I can almost always make a better decision, or almost always head something off at the pass. So being unimpeachable means making the right decisions at the right time. That always leads to the question, how do we know what the right decision is? Well, many people are look for morality in the Bible, right? And I'm not exactly talking about morality, but it's a great guidepost. Think of this as like a cheat sheet, tips and tricks. This is a great way to quickly bounce things and come back with a good decision. I think many decisions that happen in business and in the world are based on motivations that are not pure. So, and when I say not pure, I mean, man, it's about me looking good and making sure that person looks bad. Or it's about my department looking great and that department looking terrible. Or it's about me getting a bonus, and I don't care if anyone else does, right? So when we start looking at, morality, we can jump into ethics and all kinds of other things, but that's really not what this is about. This is about just looking at yourself, diving into yourself and looking at underlying motivations. So the first thing you want to do is ensure, just check it off the list. Do your actions harm anyone or any group at any time? This is really important. If you are getting ready to make a decision, and that decision is going to harm someone at your office, outside of your office, your employees, your peers, your supervisors, check it. Check that action, check that decision, even check your mouth. Our goal is not to hurt people. And I think that, my goodness, look at the media, look at our lives, look at what we're living in the United States. It's all about pain. We have to stop it. It's time to stop. So that's my first checkpoint. And that's why it's separate, because it's so important. Let's stop harming. Then we need to start looking at ourselves, self-exploration, to see if our decisions or spoken words are motivated by anything other than any of these three things. And these three things in any order, right? So it's not like first, second, third, it's not tiers, but are your decisions in the best interests of your company as an employee, as a manager, as a entrepreneur, as a longtime business owner? Are they in the best interest of your company? I think entrepreneurs or business owners have an easier time with this one because you are your business a lot of the time. But start there. Then let's look at, is this in the best interests of the people of your company? Employees there. Are you helping them? Right? So let's talk about, like, what does that mean? So when we start thinking about the people of your company, this is a different and separate consideration than the interests of just your company itself. In 1970, economist Milton Friedman said that an organization's main responsibility was to increase its shareholders' profitability. Okay, Mr. Friedman, I'm not saying he's wrong. I'm saying, I mean, he won a Nobel Prize for this, right? I'm saying that so many of our business practices are based on that. And then as Americans, as just people, we sort of are starting to take that to the extreme, right? Profit at any cost. And I think that's really, really dangerous. I think we have to look at profit in more than one way. It can't just be, are the shareholders making money? The shareholders are making money if we're making t-shirts, with children in a factory somewhere. But is that the best thing for the people of the company? It's not. It may not be the best thing for press if they get a hold of it, right? Like, there's so many nuances to consider when it comes to the people of your company. So I think we have to really think about that example, Milton Friedman's example, and then truly where the United States is going, and where business is going. And then finally, and this one's important to me too, especially working at Corbion. Corbion is a manufacturing company that creates bio-based things like food. We do food ingredients, and we really try to focus on natural, sustainable ingredients to keep our foods healthier for us and then to keep the planet healthy. And so I really like to think about this one, which is your decision, are the things you're doing, are they in the best interest of the people of the planet or the planet itself? So I know that's kind of a big one. That's pretty global, but it still is a great sounding board for your decisions. And then finally, effective unimpeachability will always be appreciated in a healthy environment, in a healthy work environment. If you are not in a healthy work environment, it may not be appreciated. So we want to use good judgment. If you are going to be effectively unimpeachable, you'll want to be able to communicate it to those people around you. And if you're in a healthy work environment, you're going to easily be able to do this. You are creating, if you start talking about being unimpeachable to those around you, and I started just in my small team at Corbion, in my digital team, and we'll be discussing things and maybe a team thing, and I'll mention, hey, okay, so we need to make a decision about this, and somebody will say something, and I'll say, okay, so let's talk about if this is unimpeachable. Is it the best for our company? Is it best for the people at our company? Is it best for the people of the planet, or for the planet itself? And so we actually will go through the process just out loud. It takes 2 seconds. I mean, really, how long did it take me to say that? And it makes this really lovely, comforting place of safety, because my employees know that that's where my brain is at. They know I'm not out to hurt them. I'm not out for self or personal, gain. I'm not going to ride there on their backs. I don't take responsibility or credit for anything that they do. I'm forever lifting them up because that's the best thing for them, right? So it's a safe place to be on my team. And then they actually spread unimpeachability. I actually just had an employee a couple of weeks ago come to me and say, oh, Jenny, I made this decision and then I had to go back and change it because I realized that my decision was actually impeachable because I was doing it because I wanted to work with these vendors, but it wasn't the best choice for the business at this time. So I went back and changed my decision. And I said, oh my gosh, I was so excited. He's using unimpeachable back to me. And now some other groups at work are doing the same thing. So this is great because it's so safe there, right? You don't have to go into a meeting and be like, is this person gonna hurt me? Is this person going to, attack? Are they going to take what I say in this meeting and go tell 10 people and then say, Jenny was an idiot in that meeting? So this safe environment of unimpeachability and transparency is key. And then examine it all the time. Use it. Like, again, in my team meetings, we talk about it. I talked about it even with my boss. I mean, my boss is amazing. And we talk about this. And then if something fails, like, this isn't a foolproof plan, obviously, right? We're not teaching a business ethics class here. But if you make a decision and your intention was unimpeachability, and you followed those guidelines, then you kind of can't lose. Because in the end, if you make a decision and those decisions come back and they didn't go great, if you can talk about it, you can say, all right, our intent was this. And if your intent truly wasn't to, better yourself, that's clear. It's obvious. Everyone, though, just so you know, knows if in fact it was to better yourself, and like the side benefit was that it was good for the business. So people sometimes think that they can, like, oh, well, this is going to be great for me and it'll be a little bit good for the business. We can all see that. Everyone knows that, right? Like, you always see it when that happens around you. You're like, oh, well, we all know why so-and-so did that. So the important part of unimpeachability is that whole transparency, the talking about it, and then walking it. You have to do it. And I'm kind of an open book. Probably you've noticed. I told you one of my most embarrassing moments at work today. But it's really important for me anyway to talk about when I failed at it, or talk about when one of my decisions didn't go great. So I take responsibility. I talk about it with my boss. I talk about it even with my employees. And so they know also, like, hey, no, I'm not perfect. No, he's perfect. Let's talk about what I did wrong. All right, so this is about maintaining your sense of self. This is back to that question that we got. This is me in a bar in Amsterdam with my boss. She's on the far right. If you guys know her, her name is Jennifer Lindsay. She is excellent. She's the CMDO at Corbion. And then one of my colleagues. And you can see by my face that I'm having a great time. Like, I have my huge smile is on, and we both look really tired because we were jet lagged. But at work, I get to be myself. I count myself very lucky in that. But I've also, even from my interview, I did not, I was myself from the start, so that they knew what to expect. And it wasn't like a shock when I showed up 3 weeks later and I was like, whoa, I actually am this person, and so it's kind of great to be able to just have a sigh of relief and be yourself at work. Okay, so this is the special sauce when it comes to being unimpeachable. First of all, give yourself grace. The other side of unimpeachability is grace. We don't want to weaponize this against others. So if someone at your work is making impeachable choices, it's not a time for you to walk up and be like, unimpeachable, you're not doing it. Unimpeachability is not a weaponized kind of a thing. It's for you. It's for your own self and maybe for your team. But when it comes to using authenticity to be unimpeachable, we really want to start talking about our own personalities. So this is about being authentic. When we figure out who we are and our authentic personality traits, then we can take those traits, the positive ones at least, because some of us have, we all have positive and we all have, I don't know if we would call them negative, but just maybe stuff we don't take to work, right? So we have these personality traits that we can, in fact, use to our advantage at work. And so this is kind of like getting a little deeper, and you can, if you don't know what your best personality traits are, or who you are, like if you're like, gosh, I'm not even sure, like I like to do these 5 things, but those are hobbies, there are tests out there. Like I took the Clifton Strength Finder is specifically for work, and it's not exactly a personality test, but I do really like it. But when it comes to your personality, the best thing to do is to ask your friends. That's what I did. I asked some friends. I asked my husband. I said, okay, here's a list of personality traits. Circle the top 5 that you think I am. And so what I found out is, here's a small list of a few things that you could be. But what I found out was that my list includes the fact that I am big picture focused. I was told that I was visionary and passionate, and then transparent. So those are my top 4. When I look at those things, and I say, okay, I can leverage my personality. So because I already have those things, they are authentic to me. And I can use those things and kind of amplify it. Think about putting a speaker kind of behind your positive personality traits. And when you do those kinds of things, it's a practice. You're working on yourself. I try to keep my negatives or my at home personality to a minimum, but I do not my at home personality, because I'm always me, but the things that people maybe wouldn't love about me, like the fact that I do have a bad temper. So I take the passionate side, I take that to work, and I leave my temper that at work. But just as I don't yell at my kids at home, I don't yell at my colleagues at work, right? Like we all have to work on those pieces. But at any rate, ask your friends and family, say, hey, what would you say are my best personality traits? Like, here's a huge list. You can print them out on the internet. They're everywhere. And have them circle, and then see, where everything kind of overlaps. And then, kind of help you define yourself in your brain. All right, these are my top 4 best. And then kind of amplify those things. This is the special sauce for being unimpeachable, because everyone is drawn to someone that is authentically themselves. So you don't want to choose personality traits that you aren't, right? If you're not, really energetic, don't put energetic on your list and then try to amplify that, because it's going to be hard. It's not authentic, and people will know. People can always see that, hey, this is not authentic. So being these things consistently, again, it's easy because of who you are. This inspires trust in those people around you. This means that people will listen, follow, and consider your words. Final tips, takeaways. You can learn from my journey, as I've told you about it today, but you can also learn it from your own. Look in your past and say, oh, there was a moment where I could have been more unimpeachable. Because again, this is a practice. You'll do it forever. Just, bounce things against those objects. So on the left-hand side of the screen, you'll see the things that you can do. You can speak your truth. You can raise your hand. You can seek to learn. You can stretch to altruism, and you can be authentic. And then on the right side of the screen, it says, these are this being unimpeachable. So you're going to do the left-hand side, you're going to be the right-hand side. So as you're unimpeachable, you're going to constantly communicate about it. You're going to constantly examine it, figure out who you are, and amplify unimpeachability through your own personality traits and authenticity, to put it all to work. Unimpeachability is not the only answer. It's not perfect. It doesn't solve all ethical business problems. It's a leadership practice that should hopefully maybe help shape a better future. I can't promise you that working this way will 100% of the time lead you to success, glory, or riches, but I believe that I can promise you that practicing being unimpeachable can make you a better employee, employer, colleague, and leader. Thank you. Any questions?
Yeah, well, Jenny, thank you so much. Well, I know we've gone way over. I'm a terrible,
Oh, I'm
terrible
sorry. Oh,
head. But I will go with this one question. And for anybody that has any questions for Jenny, please put them in the chat and she can follow up with us. But we will go with this one question from Aaron that says, what about people that are authentic at work?
I'm sorry. Say that again. I missed it.
Yeah. So any advice for people that are not authentic at work?
Yeah, it's tough because when you are not authentic, you do in fact kind of blend in with those around you. Again, my advice is to find the pieces of yourself that you believe you can be authentic with at work. So when I completely understand that you want to keep your private self to yourself at home, that you are. I'm certain that all of you lovely people have wonderful traits that you can identify and bring those authentic traits with you. I think it's just about identifying them and introducing them. And maybe a little bit at a time if you're a little bit uncomfortable showing more of yourself at work. But it doesn't mean you have to air your dirty laundry. It doesn't mean you have to share your life. It's about your personality.
Well, thank you so much for your advice. Well, as we wrap, before we move to our panel, do you have any final words of wisdom for all of our viewers today?
You know what? I don't. Just please let me know if you have any questions. My email's on this screen. My phone number's on this screen. I love to talk about this. I do lots of presentations, and this is my favorite thing to talk about. So thank you so much for your time. I know it. Everyone's busy, so I appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much for your time. That was fantastic.
Thank you.